just give it probably another, we'll just give it another half a minute, and then we'll go ahead. We've got the panel ready. My name is Naveen. I'm with Entomo, and just give us another 30 seconds as people just gather in. I guess by now, I mean, it's been a year and we've lived on Zoom, so I don't need to explain to you where the icons are. Even my father now knows how to navigate through Zoom. But please keep writing your questions or comments, bottom right, and feel free to, I'll pause wherever it is for addressing questions to the panelists. Thank you very much for joining. Okay, we just go ahead, I guess, as people join in, they'll be able to tune in. We've also recorded this, so in case they miss the early pearls of wisdom, they'll obviously be able to catch it on a recording. We have a fabulous panel here. I know most of them, and I don't want to run through their CV, but David, a great friend and a colleague, and Katya, an author and probably the activist on this panel. You'll hear some very interesting perspectives from her. I enjoyed some of our preps. Mayank, who's a partner, friend with EdCast, and Fadi, who has some very interesting perspectives from the government. We had the opportunity to work a little bit with the organization that he represents as well. Some very exciting work that they do with the Dubai government. So the format is pretty simple, which is I have a few questions to the panelists. If you have questions in between, please feel free to just keep asking them in the Q&A box. And I think we would like to make it a lot more relevant to what you want to be asked. Let me first start with Mayank. And I wanted to ask, I mean, during the prep, I'm going to steal one of your facts that you mentioned, Mayank, which is probably 3/4 of the organizations have invested in some form of online. I also read through statistics, which shows that just last year, we've made so much of progress, which is probably equal to a decade of what would have taken for online learning or various formats in which we moved how we learn. Yet, I mean, I guess it seems to be very different when it comes back to it being connected to different aspects of talent and performance. I just wanted to get your views from EdCast's perspective on where do you see and what is the vision of how this can be connected?
Thank you, Naveen. A couple of things, I think, while the pandemic has ensured that the rate of digital adoption and then application to talent management has significantly changed and improved in the last 12 months. I think now is the time when organizations are exploring the effectiveness with which digital programs are themselves working. By that, I mean the ability of, let's say, the systems that you deploy for talent management and the interconnectivity between them, actually creating data and insights that can drive executive decision making, and also therefore create a direct alignment between organizational performance, business results, and structured learning programs that are being deployed. So that alignment is one major area of focus that seems to be gaining prominence. I think the second place where organizations are putting a lot of focus is now trying to drive continuous learning efforts and embedding learning in the flow of work in order to provide employees real-time information and content that is enabling their work and enabling their performance. So that's the second major element. And the third element is essentially robust, structured analytics, not as a standalone, system, but as a system that is able to track both activities and outcomes and embed that on a 24/7 basis for use either at a learner level or at a manager level or at a department level or at an organizational level. I think that in sum total, those three elements, um, direct alignment, continuous learning inputs, and learning analytics is where we see a huge amount of focus and effort.
I know you have some views on how different geographies adopt to this and so on. We'll come to it. I'll request Chad to put up a slide in probably another 30 seconds. I think the next question is to Katya. I mean, I've been on both sides of this aisle, which is with the cool toys of technology and with an organization where I'm pulling my hair off to say, how do I land this, right, in an organization? I know you have a IP model of readiness of organization, which probably will help our attendees know to say, where am I on this? When should I use some of this, right? So do you want to talk us through that particular organizational model that's there?
Well, to be honest, I've prepared this in 2014 already. And at that time, most of the organizations that I was looking at were what I call data repository companies. So where data, knowledge is like that material within the organization, trapped in silos, very difficult to approach, owned by the IT. At that time, we didn't see much ROI on the learning and on the sharing of the data, because data is also learning. And it's actually strange to see that now in 2021, that still most of the companies that I see around the globe are still some kind of data repository. We don't use the data. We don't share all the knowledge. We still see too many organizations that are trapped in silos. I always say, just a simple example, the people from learning and marketing, they should talk together. They have so much experience in marketing that they can actually learn from their colleagues. So that's only one thing about how organizations are structured. Also, the way that leadership works in these kind of companies, then we see that some companies, they become broadcasters of news. So they share a lot of information to the people, but it's not landing. They also can't measure the impact. And the same when we think about technologies, I hear companies going like, we have this learning experience platform. We have so much learning on it, but if it doesn't land in a lean way to the people that they can find the knowledge when they need it and use it to perform better in their job and in their lives, then it's still that material. So there are a lot of stuff that you have to look at to become actually learning ecosystems where we are bridging all the knowledge gaps within the company, where we can perform with knowledge when we need it, and that we also can measure it with the right KPIs. Also, in this fifth stage of company, then we should use everything that we have from artificial intelligence to not only improve our organization's business outcomes, but also the well-being of the people. So this is very short because, I can write a book about this, but this is how I see that learning can be oxygen for a nimble organization.
Thank you very much for that, Chad. Thank you for putting this up. It's interesting that you mentioned this, and we have somebody who's a data expert here, but he calls himself an HR professional. So sometimes, David is a bit of both on this. Now, we heard interestingly from both of them a lot of data, and I mean, just try and simplify this for us. I mean, I'm a CHRO. What should I do? I mean, I heard from Katya in terms of readiness. What should I do on whatever data, analytics, all the buzzwords around it? How should I get ready?
Yes, so I'm actually less surprised than Katja is that most organizations are still in data repository mode. It actually starts with data. You cannot have data science, you cannot predict anything without data. So I think where you should start as an organization is first to build that data. But then having said that, there is also something like you don't need to wait until everything is perfect. What I mean is like when I spoke with large organizations, often it was said like, I cannot start with data science because my systems are not 100% aligned. Start collecting first, work on your alignment, the quality of data, the data cleaning, but then start using it. I mean, anyway, you're spending, if we take it back to learning, you're spending already on learning at this stage. You definitely want to know what is the impact in the organization, what is the impact on the employees, what is the impact in the organization. So just start. I think that's my advice. Start and don't do it sequential. Start with your just focus on quality of data, amount of data. Don't throw data away. And then, but also start using your tools. Start creating some insights, even if it's basic. Better something than nothing.
And this you're assuming is data across performance or learning.
Yeah,
that includes.
It's a good point. My mantra is don't throw data away. You don't know how correlations are. So right now, if you only look at learning, traditionally it was very much like input-based data that we're looking at. How many trainings do we do? What does it actually mean? Not much. So you start figuring out, okay, it must have an impact on employee behavior. So where do we find that? Oh, do we see, we're talking later about learning agility. Do we see certain elements that actually predict learning agility in someone? So the more the better in that way, if that answers the question. Collect as much as you can, keep it. Guard it, but keep it. Yeah.
Got it. Adi, I mean, this moves us to probably one of the largest consumers in the Middle East is obviously the government, and you have some interesting perspectives. I know that the governments in the last 12 months have also probably for the first time changed the way in which they work. First time, I think governments are thinking of hybrid working, online learning, various things that are there. I mean, we've also been involved in some of this. You have some interesting perspectives on the Dubai and the Abu Dhabi government. Do you want to share those with us?
Hi, everyone. Actually, you know, like what we had experience in the government during the pandemic, it was like it came suddenly where nobody was prepared. And it's like we experiment all of the practices that, you know, like, I mean, the HR experiment, all the practices that we did, like from the virtual working to like the blended and implementing some platform for collaboration and for, you know, like task follow up and so on, and even for the learning platforms. And, you know, like I thought like Dubai government is because the structure of the economy is like based on the people movement, and still it's not transformed toward working virtually. So they need us, or they need the people, even the private sector, to still go to their offices, go to the restaurants, go to the coffee shop every day, move their cars, and, you know, like consuming fuel. So this is what driving the economy in Dubai. And the opposite side in Abu Dhabi, because the economy is like more driven by the government projects and the government spending. So government find an opportunity to optimize the operation during the virtual or remote working model. And they found it like it's interesting to be implemented permanently. So that's why currently they are experimenting in a large scale. And they are really investing heavily on the collaboration platforms. They are experimenting to move 40% almost from their employees to work remotely for a long time, preparing to move to the second phase to have 70% out of the operation or the employees to move virtually. Yeah. So, and they are investing fast, and they want to see how this can reflected on the operation cost, the infrastructure spending, you know, like the assets. All of this really will be for them, will be a win-win for them and for the employee, especially that they found a high performance during the remote work, which is unexpected, you know. So, but still, on the long run, Dubai government, I believe they will be adapted more. The economy will be restructured toward such circumstances, but still it will take time.
Very interesting. I mean, I think we see these as organizations as well, which is somewhere has organization strategy changed, future of work. We keep speaking a lot about it. I mean, it seems live the way you are explaining it has an impact on how performance is probably managed, measured, coached, how people learn and so on. Which comes back to, I guess, Mayank, from your, again, EdCast perspective, you have these two interesting views on, if I broadly say, purpose and leadership behaviors, right? In this new world of where people are going to be in different disparate places, how do I convey purpose and how do I manage leadership behavior when I don't have them in one physical space? We spend probably decades in corporations mastering it in a physical environment, not in a virtual. How does EdCast or anybody else how are they doing this or helping companies?
So I think this question is much beyond EdCast, so to say, but the context of purpose as it lies as a priority in the employee's eyes is something that organizations have started to address or at least notice in the last few years, right? Today, you have a population coming into the workforce who is more aligned to social impact and purpose than it was ever before. And therefore, that drives decisions of employability itself to begin with. So today, I don't want to work for a company that is actually using child labor to manufacture products in Africa, but market them in the Western world, right? Today, I don't want to work for an organization that does not pay any attention to its environmental responsibilities. Today, I don't want to work for an organization that doesn't address issues of gender and diversity as a prime, institutional value. And that itself drives who I want to be as an organization. Therefore, in the context of how organizations upskill and reskill and develop their employees, these social priorities need to start reflecting as elements of learning ambition or learning priority. And the organization's ability, therefore, to map social purpose and along with business performance KPIs or metrics is where the world is moving towards, right? Therefore, any system that is today only asking an employee to learn about 3 metrics which are only based on his job is defeating its own purpose. The elements of priority therefore have to become elements of organizational focus and elements that are important to the employee and the ability to marry these two. Once that is done, you are therefore starting the effort to build more socially responsible citizens itself. And that itself, mirrors the priority of building socially responsible leaders and therefore employees, right? And therefore every system within the organization, whether it's the system of learning or it's the system of performance or it's the system of how resources are organized and marshaled, whether it's how technology comes in to support employees at work, needs to drive this combined purpose as a way forward.
Interesting. I mean, I have lived through, I guess, in my own lifetime, concepts of where performance was, it is November now, and hence it is performance season, and it is February, and hence you try to draw out a training calendar, and a CHRO's role was very seasonal in that sense on what they did across. Clearly, I guess the flavor has moved to being continuous more than anything else. Katya, I'm going to kind of continue with your the maturity model. I mean, every CHRO will aspire to getting to the level 5, right? What are 3 things that from your experience I should do as a CHRO to get to that?
Well, I really like the question. And I first want to say to Mayank that I'm completely agreeing with him that this purpose driven is very important. And I see also here a role for HR. What we have seen in the last couple of months like more than a year already, is that we start to social collaborate using technology. We know how to use Zoom. It's what you said in the beginning. Even our grandfather can use Zoom now, but we still are using technology besides our normal lives. And if we want to go to social collaboration companies that become data driven, then we should actually build portfolios of humans and machines working together. So using the best of both worlds. I know there's a lot of fear when I say this, that we actually can use artificial intelligence to make us better persons. So I think one of the first priorities of HR should be explaining the people that this industrial revolution, where we use more and more technology, is not something that we should fear. And when we implement it in organizations, we should explain that we actually want to help the humans to become more human, to let the machines do the jobs that we are not so good in and free our time to do that what we really want. And also when we talk about learning, it's more learning in the flow of life. It's not only on the workplace that we learn. If you want to become better citizens, like Mayank is saying, then we also need to learn more about the values of our company, of our nations, to become these better citizens. So I think technology can help a lot in this. And I think the first priority of HR is to make this information flow through the organization, but also that we tell it to those people that they understand it. If you have a lot of blue collar workers, you have a different message to send to them than you have to do to, for example, your leadership. So make it understandable for everybody. I think that's the first priority. Also, this transformation is huge. And what I see in many organizations is that there is not really somebody who is taking control of everything. What I see is that we leave the digital transformation to the people of IT, and HR is, if they're already present in the boardroom, they're not active. And I see a big role here for HR to actually take this opportunity to say that we can drive actually the portfolios of humans and machines working together. I call this in my book Learnscapers. Those people, they have an understanding of people, and we should think people first. I see too many IT implementations that are mainly focused on data, mainly focused on the security of the system, and then IT is driving it, and that leads to a lot of frustrations for many people. So working more together, break down the silos. I told it before, break a silo between marketing and HR and IT. And then the last part, what I was thinking is, there's a lot of data. And David was also saying that we have so much data in the organization. And when we talk about data, nobody actually asks HR, like, what is it that you really want to measure? And think outside of the box. How can we measure the well-being of the people? And then I'm not talking about using AI systems to measure how much time you have spent using your email or in meetings, and measure performance on these kinds of data. So I think HR should think with the rest of the organization in what kind of data that we really want to measure for the growth of the human and the organization with it.
And if I could just add there, Katya, I mean, while technology and AI and ML are accelerating, this direction, I think what has also started to happen is the use of structure and learning personas and learning styles, right? In the context of understanding what the broad use case in the first place is. Once the learning persona and the learning style has been understood, then relevant content is being sourced in order to deliver to use and to personalization.
Yeah.
Right? And along with that, sorry.
That's what I call the lean learning. Bring the
Yeah.
learning to the people when they need it, that they can apply it, and in a format that they can actually understand it to better job.
Yes.
And it's
And
funny.
then,
Awesome. Great segue to ask probably David on even if I call it learning agility or any of those things. I mean, I guess, David, you've lived two parts of it also, which is this whole continuous performance and continuous learning. And there's clearly it is becoming almost an everyday thing today of how do you do it in small bits that is there. How do organizations move to this again? I mean, any insights in terms of how they develop it and how companies can adopt this?
Yeah, you asked me about learning agility and about this bit size kind of situation. I think we're moving away from bit size a little bit. That was a kind of like a trend probably about 2 years ago. The way I see the learning agility is kind of like it's actually linking back also to talent management. I did a bit of research, so I found out that if you are learning agile, you have 18 times more chance to become identified as a high potential. I don't know, that might be 15, might be 20, you might discuss it, but there is clearly. The other thing is, if you look at learning agility, where it connects basically is not only around speed, but we think it's not only about flexibility, it's also about interpersonal risk taking. It's also about collaboration. It's like how you collect your information and how you collect your feedback. What links back to leadership style. And then when you kind of like link that back again to technology, technology can help you to create these insights, can help you to make these decisions, but it's the human being that Katja was talking about, the leader, will actually make the difference. So this is collaboration between human and machine. Learning agility, you're this hypo, great leader that listens to their employees, kind of like Liz Wiseman wrote in her book about the multiplier. I think it's pretty linked to the multiplier in that way. You will make better decisions when you get your systems, your information in terms of feedback on how you're doing. If you can ask around, of course, your people how I'm doing, but why wouldn't you not also use the 360-degree option, or why wouldn't you use your learning ecosystem to get this level of feedback?
And your definition of learning agility is where it's pretty much continuous. It is available when I want it, a bit like what Mayank mentioned, which is when I have a performance issue, there is some system that is helping me provide that nudge, either as a learning or any other aspect. Is that a...
I would say learning agility is everywhere and every time where you're there. Like you always learn. So in that way, the system supports you, but it's always on. Whatever you do, hopefully even in your private life to a certain extent as well, but for sure in professional life. And systems are helpful with it. Yeah.
Interesting. Fadi, I mean, you mentioned about governments moving obviously to hybrid work models and so on. We also spoke briefly sometime on a huge adoption on mobility and mobility solutions and various such things that are there. So clearly, I mean, the assumption is that it is obviously on the go. A lot of things are expected to be done. Where is the government thinking on this whole piece that is there?
Frankly, before even the pandemic, the government was, trying to move forward to mobilizing the learning tools in order to give an access to employees and more flexible way, to have access to that material, more personalized, as my colleague said. And, they want to move out from the traditional way of training, doing physical training directly in specific subjects, which is boring. And, there is no high engagement. And sometimes it's given for not relevant employees. So now they're trying to focus more about personalizing this and mobility, having it, implementing the tools, working on creating a content. Like there is a huge content creation now it's running on the government. And sometimes it's not only they utilize outside content, but they start building their own content digitally, and I believe that started before to increase the performance and the impact of this training. This started way before the pandemic, but now it's accelerated. and they found the output of it, because some organizations was ready with these tools and infrastructure toward, like utilizing these tools during the pandemic time.
So you do see a huge uptick, and governments will continue to leverage that, I'm assuming.
A lot investing now on learning and mobility of learning, and like having more personalized content. It's really huge in the government, and like they start funding. It's like there is several level of learning, and like maybe the speakers have more insights about learning and training more than me. But on the government implementation, they usually focus about what you have currently and how you can know more about it, like about the internal strategy, the internal tools, the internal system, and then they move forward to how you want to extend your knowledge, and like in which direction you want to go, and this need to be aligned strategically on your career path inside the organization, and they are working heavily on that.
Mayank, you had a contra view to this, which is to say that in the same pandemic, probably the West moved much faster on some of these adoptions as compared to the Middle East. I mean, there's no dearth of ambition, I guess, in the Middle East. And are they catching up, or what is the difference that is there that the Middle East can learn in this?
I think the first difference is where they are poised along the maturity curve itself, right? The second difference is, where they are starting the digital transformation journey from. The third difference lies on what are the expectations out of this digital transformation. I mean, if you were to look at the Middle East for many reasons, including the cultural context, is just starting the journey of digital adoption, and therefore the first focus for this region will be towards bringing people onto the platform, engaging with these people in order to ensure that there is a certain degree of stickiness created with this system of productivity, while realizing cost advantages and process efficiencies that can be driven. Once that use case is established and a wider benefit is seen, then the transformation will start towards driving adoption and engagement using these technologies. At the third level, the interfunctional interoperability between organizing, learning, staffing, rewarding, and performing will start to get established. When the interdependency between metrics that arrive out of these five systems will start to get tracked. And all of this will therefore condition the movement up the value chain or the maturity curve. And that's the journey which I think broadly a large number of markets across the EMEA region, specifically in the Middle East and Africa, are poised at.
Okay, I'm going to try and just check something which is an interesting one, which I know you live a life in Europe as well as in the Middle East. And very interesting that Fadi and Mayank are also talking about something which is not natural to the Middle East. I mean, obviously people like their meetings, and the social bonding is very large, a lot like some of the Asian cultures and so on. Will working and some of these change some of the social fabrics in some ways?
That's a good question. I live indeed in the both worlds. And I have to say, Europe is big. If you see the difference, I'm coming from Belgium, and even, David is from the Netherlands. The culture of working together is very different. So I think it's for everybody difficult to go in this hybrid mood of learning and working together with families. Even might say something that's maybe a little strange, but I think especially for women in Europe, it's very hard because we don't have somebody to help us with the children, and we don't have like the families around us like here. I think here, because of you have this family that helps you with children. Some people have nannies. I think for many people in the northern countries in Europe, it might even be more difficult. So I don't think you can compare it. I think it's difficult for everybody around the globe. And I think everybody has to adapt, and we have to find ways, because I don't think we go completely back to the way it was. So I've seen so many resilience in the last year. I think I have hope. I have hope.
Well,
Interesting.
I think the major difference that we are going to now see through this digital adoption and transformation is transparency and accountability. I think those are two elements that will pop very quickly as far as this region goes. Technology has always been seen as something that creates process efficiencies, but not when it applies to me in work. Because that's where I become open to questioning, or my accountability comes to the forefront, right? And therefore, I think those are the two elements that you'll see a major difference.
But Mayank,
I mean, digital democratization is an interesting one for sure. Sorry,
Yeah.
David, go ahead.
yeah, I wanted to say, recently I heard somebody complaining about like this, Microsoft is collecting a lot of data about you, what you do behind your laptop. Other programs can do that as well. And I came to the conclusion that slowly it looks like we're going back to Taylor, where you measure how much time you spent on whatever you're supposed to be doing. I think if that's transparency, I don't think we should be going there. And I feel
There's a very interesting view on that, David. If you listen to the ex-NSA head, Michael Hayden, he was the CIA and NSA head. He says some of the information that we in the 60s, 70s used to keep in our lockers and locked, right? Now we put it out there, right? So why tell Facebook or Microsoft on this? Yes, of course, they do collect a lot of information, but we seem to be putting a lot of information out there.
yeah.
Katya mentioned something very interesting on resilience and family and how we are coping in this. I know in your probably 5th or 7th avatar of an entrepreneur, you're doing something on wellness. And how are some of these linked? Because I mean, there is a performance learning, Fadi mentioned on working from home. And there's of course a flavor of wellness that is also coming into this whole piece. Do you have a view on this, David?
Yeah, first of all, Katja, when Katja was speaking, she was speaking about this mental health thing next to physical wellness. I mean, a lot of people gained a few kgs, but they also got a few more burdens, mental burdens on them. Like, how do I take care of the kids? And I'm going from Zoom call to Zoom call, and I don't even know how to do that. Everybody's talking about now how important mental health or mental wellness is at the moment at the workplace. I think we go beyond, not beyond that, but it will be even more specific digital wellness. So I feel like that element, like how do we deal with this technology, is very important. In reality, we all have already technology, and we're already kind of like digital transformed many years ago. I mean, we have our mobile phone, we have our virtual assistant on the mobile phone, we have Netflix is using AI to determine what you should be watching or not. There's nothing, I wouldn't say there's nothing new. New is that it all came so quickly together because of the pandemic situation. Coming back to the question, like, how does it link? Employees are more people in general who are healthier, have a better level of wellness. They perform better. I mean, there are like the profitability will definitely increase, the productivity will increase, and you don't need to apply a Taylor-like model. The thing where data really becomes important is also like, how do you measure it? How do you avoid that it becomes fluffy? So you need to kind of like start collecting that data, use it in a proper way, and then build your wellness strategies on for that. And since the pandemic, before the pandemic, wellness, employee wellness was a kind of like nice to have, and primarily an individual responsibility. Nowadays, almost every organization considers this as at least an organizational responsibility as well, and a very important topic. So that's how it connects with creating a healthy.
All of these.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I guess, Fadi, you probably at the cutting edge, and I haven't seen a webinar in the last 12 months which doesn't ask a question on AI ML, and I've resisted that so far for about 40 minutes now. So the question is, I guess, to you, Fadi, on Where do you see, I mean, AI, ML, some of these coming into performance learning? I mean, what's the thinking in the government on this one?
Frankly, I mean, like, implementing AI, like to optimize and personalize the learning edge in the government, I think it's still not implemented well. There is like different type of HR perspective and HR policies. It's not, there is no one united or agreed form strategy on the HR and the government and how we can deal on the learning curve in the organization. But I believe, like as we are working closely with His Excellency Omar, the Minister of AI and the AI Ministry, that like having that AI Ministry now on the government, it's really give more insight for each organization or ministry or like government department, how to utilize AI in the best way to enhance their performance, to optimize their tools. And one of it's the learning. But I think it's still private sector need to play a big role on make eye-opening for the government on how to utilize these tools. Because I don't think the government still understanding the value of having AI for the platforms. So I think the private sector with their new products, the evidence, the data, the analysis, the results that they have from a prototyping or different implementation in different countries, they need to showcase this to the government to convince them about how to implement AI on the government learning systems.
Very interesting. I'm sure Omar Al-Shamsi listening to this or Mayank would be salivating on that idea. We're coming to almost the end of it. I'm just going to go around the room for some closing comments. Maybe Katya will start with you. A quick 1 minute on any of your closing comments on this topic.
Well, I want to say something about AI and learning because there is a lot of fuss about it, and many people don't know what AI actually means. There's a very, very big difference between weak AI and strong AI. And weak AI is something that makes the learning adaptive, so that indeed what was said already, that something that you are good at, that you can better at it. If this is your career path, then we can see to the past data and assume that this will be interesting for you. But I'm going to be honest, Netflix, they have like these deep neural networks that are actually quite good. And still, when I look at Netflix and I think, is this what they recommend to me? So I have my ideas on how strong AI already is. And then if we indeed want to go to the very strong AI that can predict what would be interesting for me, then again, I have my doubts, because is it ethically okay that a machine will say to me what my life would look like? Maybe I'm a really good heart surgeon and I want to become a plumber. Well, it both has veins, but no technology will ever make that link. So I think we first have to understand a little bit more, and that's why I think a lot of organizations should hire somebody who has the experience of the people and the technology. And as I said before, I think HR should take a lead here.
I did introduce you as the activist on the panel, and I think you stood up to that particular label. That's fair. Thank you very much for it. I think you're quite right to say somewhere the typecasting that is happening on social media of what I should read, what I should see on YouTube and various other things is narrowing a lot of things and is just fueling some of this. David, your closing comment?
Yeah, I was thinking more about also digital engagement. One of the challenges that I see right now is like, yes, we have introduced a lot of new tools. We are on Zoom. How do we actually engage? Even on this panel, like you have asked for questions. How do we get people to ask questions? How do we get them to really use the technology that will make our lives easier, better in a proper way? Katja mentioned something about the marketing departments. I think this is one of the main challenges. I can even see it like people are, I wouldn't say get digital tired, but yeah, we need to kind of like find a way of better engaging with people in a digital world. And I don't have the answer yet. If I would say I wouldn't be rich, but like there's still a lot to to discover. But I think we get to this point where we need to think about new creative ways of engaging people. And I think you should also bring that to the learning platform, because if it's just like this is what you have to do, and this is what the system recommends, I'm not sure if we really get the human touch into learning. So yeah, you said 1 minute. I want to leave it like that.
Interesting. I mean, a lot of science journals now writing papers to saying now they're kind of revising some of it to say as people met is when happiness increases, and they're able to see the reverse of it now because they do have a petri dish now. Mike, I'm going to come to you last on this one. Fadi, your views on this? Last closing comments.
Like just need to have a comment on what Kathy said about, like having people, knows the people inside the organization, how they are thinking. This will be really increasing the performance. There is a very interesting example in one of the government organization. They try to engage their employees on the content, this content about, tell you how to utilize the tools. And they tried several times, they didn't success. And then the HR take the lead and they create a series, a TV series, a sort of drama series that they brought inside for the organization. But during this drama, the people is utilizing the Microsoft tools and collaboration tools where, you can learn how to utilize these tools during this story. And it was amazing and very big success for them. So really, it's like you can always learn, and you can know that people have their own way. Technology is just facilitator and people need to lead.
Interesting. Thank you very much for that, Fadi. Mayank, your closing comments?
Yes, and I have comments for both Katya and David. So I'm going to start with Katya. I think it's the ways that you utilize the context of AI in order to enable and facilitate action and outcomes on a digital platform, which is important, right? I mean, do keep in mind that across the last, I think, 2 weeks. Apple has uploaded new software, and every system that Apple is now connecting to, i.e. Instagram, Facebook, and any of my other apps, when the system is rebooted, has asked me today on whether I want to share my personal data with any of the other apps, and that choice is with me. If I do decide to share that information, then I have the right to leverage that technology, good or bad. It's too early to say, right? I'll give you another example. I'm a big sportsman and I'm a big golfer. And every time I go and do a search on Google on something to do with the sport, I am now getting connected feeds inside my Instagram and inside my Facebook. And I like that because it's now collating the relevant information for me and bringing it for my consumption. So that's the part that I like. But your comments, Katya, on us being too early in the journey and treating this with kids' gloves at this stage are relevant. That's point one. Point number two to you, David. You're completely right. I mean, deploying a technology does not deliver the success of the technology, right? Because the entire cultural transformation that is required to enable usage, adoption, and engagement along that digital adoption is a key element. Now, what does that mean? That essentially means that the gatekeepers for the technology, i.e. learning administrators today, need to change skill sets. So you are now talking, digital promotion, you are talking activation, you are talking communication, you are talking interpretation of analytics and insights, right? These are new skill sets that need to be enabled within the organization in order to facilitate the personalized one-on-one interaction with learners in order to help fill the gaps. And that's another place where digital adoption fails, right? Unless we are able to package, enable internal organizations to deliver this alongside the digital transformation journey, change will obviously fail, as history is proven. I mean, go back to SAP implementation through the 90s, and you'll see the same story unfold.
Thank you very much, Mayank. That was a good way to wrap up. Katya, clearly you triggered a few conversations where everybody wanted to have a view on this. I'd like to thank both Entomo and Edcast for hosting this. Everybody who joined us, middle of your day, whenever it is, wherever you are, thank you for taking this time. This recording will be available. I'm sure somebody would reach out to you as well with the recording. I'd like to thank the panelists, Katya, Fadi, Mayank, and David. I'm sure sometime we'll meet up in person and hopefully have a different way of panel other than the Zoom. But thank you for your fantastic perspectives. I also learned a lot during the session. Great meeting all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.